World Economic Forum meets in Davos, right, run by Klaus Schwab. It's this consortium of sort of technologists and engineers and philosophers of technology. And they recently had their summit, their Davos summit, and they started to talk about, like, what are they going to do with metaverse technology? And so I just want to read to you some of the things that they think would be good to use virtual reality for. He says, the metaverse will also transform education and training and make recruiting essentially location agnostic. As interviews with avatars become commonplace and the ability to collaborate, interact, and work in the metaverse becomes more widely available, companies will be able to push new frontiers in terms of diversity. Metaverse will help strengthen the on-the-job training. Employers will be able to deliver ongoing training and upskilling programs in simulated real-life-like environments without risking their reputation or their employees' safety. Training in the metaverse will have the potential to create better trained, better skilled workers who are more likely to thrive in the real world. Now, I'm somebody who works remotely, right? Claremont Institute is in California. I'm out here in Nashville. And so I have benefited from even before, Web3 or whatever, I have benefited from the interconnectivity that the internet creates. And I do this podcast remotely, right? My producers are in California and I'm here in Nashville. And all of this stuff, as far as I'm concerned, is great. It's put power in the hands of people who didn't otherwise have it. It's empowered women, to talk about, like, empowering women or whatever. The actual reality of being able to do stuff at home has been really good for recovering the idea of the cottage industry, so that, women who have obviously goals and ambitions beyond just homemaking, are able nevertheless to do homemaking, right? And to live out their nature as nurturers while also, running a business on the side or whatever. You can do that now. And this was one of the things that, when people started going back to work after COVID, women tended to be a little bit more happy with being at home because they were able to sort of be with their kids rather than just being on this grind. And, all of this is simply to say, I'm not personally against remote work, but there's a difference between saying, well, a little bit of this thing works versus we should completely blow the doors off of, and just go 100% in this direction. And if you peel past the sort of corporate jargon of this WEF statement, it's basically saying, well, we can ship all our jobs to China, right? All our jobs can be in India, right? We can breach new frontiers in terms of diversity, which we know means only diversity in one direction. It doesn't mean ideological diversity. We can have conservatives and liberals involved. It doesn't actually mean like racial diversity in the sense of like, well, we can have white people and black people. It's just like we can have more people that count as sort of, that count as diverse, more like brown people, and so we can outsource more of our jobs and we can do it all digitally and remotely. So we can just, upload our workspace to some sort of virtual reality platform. And then we don't have to employ anybody in those nasty middle American, Rust Belt areas or any of those nasty Trump voters. This is what I mean when I say this technology is in itself pretty cool. And there's stuff that we could use it for sure. But the people who are currently in charge, right, of our elite institutions have a very warped view of what, a utopia might look like, because they are basically sophists, right? They are basically the craftsmen who make things with their hands and consider themselves wise. So they have this perfect plan. Well, of course, like, we're going to diversify the workplace. And it's like, well, who's going to suffer from that, right? So unless we have, some of our older ideas in play here, unless we have our values like, patriotism, for instance, and love of one's own, love of country, right? Unless those things are strong in us, then we're just going to, submit to this idea. But there's nothing written in the tech that says that we have to, right? I mean, what if, we could think about how cryptocurrency and remote work could be used to empower Americans by American corporations, right? What if we asked that of our corporations? And what if we said, well, actually, you're not going to just get to outsource every job to non-citizens, right? The contrast here is not between people that want the metaverse and people that don't want the metaverse. The contrast is between people who see this new tech and think, well, we can basically abolish physical space and natural connection and, human loves and just, maximize efficiency in the WEF form, right? Or those who want to say, well, okay, how can we use this to become more human, to become better Americans, right? And so asking those questions, right, and learning to step outside the cave and say, well, how can we use this to get us closer to actual reality where, human love means connection between two living souls, not connection between one human soul and a kind of avatar that pretends to be a soul, right? How can we how can we learn from Plato's cave and the insistence upon to on, that which is, not to go down the WEF route?